2024 was in my opinion a good gaming year if you were willing to dig deeper outside of the AAA realm. After favorites and disappointments videos, I'll try something I haven't done before. Predictions for 2025. Thanks for this idea goes to one of the viewers that suggested it in the comment section. A bit arrogant to even delve into the prediction waters, but I'll try it out nonetheless. Only games that I'll be talking about are RPGs and some other familiar big titles that interest me. Games I know very little or nothing about, early access games, ones that don't interest me at all won't be mentioned. In my reviews I put current and potential scores. Current meaning what would be the score for the game in the current state, while potential score is after many realistic patches and updates. Core of the games are rarely or almost never changed, so potential score only accounts for things that can be changed realistically, like balancing, technical issues and similar things. So let's get started, you prophetic bastards. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is the first release that interests me, and it interests me extremely. I love the first game and believe that Warhorse Studio can build on it to make an even better experience. Especially at the release date, I would like to see Kingdom Come 2 more polished than the original was on its release, but not expecting it. I think it's gonna be a mess again due to sheer size and unique handcrafted content. Gonna take some time to make it all technically good in terms of frame rate glitches and bugs, but as long as it is at least playable to a satisfying degree, it should be fine. What matters most is that the sequel has good story as the first game, interesting characters, quests and an even more polished, incredibly realistic combat system with a great open world full of dynamic content. One of the more important things they need to do right this time is balancing, because the original went from difficult to too easy way too quickly, which did affect my enjoyment a lot. Base game is there to build on, and they don't even have to change almost anything. Few modifications, better balancing, better technically on the release date, layers of polish that the first game didn't have, and that's all it needs. My prediction for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is 7 on release date, which means a good game with potential of 9, which means amazing game after all technical stuff and balancing had been hopefully sorted. Avowed is the next game that I'm somewhat interested in. Seen plenty of gameplay stuff from Avowed, but just don't think that it has enough to separate itself from the basic RPGs like their Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds isn't a mediocre game at all, it's a decent to good, but it's so basic. My faith in Avowed isn't particularly high because of couple possibilities. Whether it is because Obsidian, one of my favorite developers by the way, are playing it safe with Avowed as they did with Outer Worlds, or maybe the talent to create something more deep and meaningful has left, or Microsoft doesn't allow them to go for what Obsidian does best. First problem is that the game seems family friendly in terms of graphical style and gore. In first-person RPGs, blood and gore can be a thing that separates them from the pack, like in the case of Fallout New Vegas. While the gameplay seems quite engaging and dynamic, a more serious tone would be more immersive for me. I get it, it's based on Deadfire, one of my favorite CRPGs, so the graphical style needs to be a bit more vivid, but I don't get why such art style can't be bloody in a more playful and less menacing way. Or it is just for age ratings to be able to sell it to more people. When it comes to writing, I have all the faith in the world that Obsidian can create brilliant stuff from anything. I don't see how they could fail in that department. I don't even think gameplay is going to be mediocre, as it looks good. It's just that from all the footage that I've seen, nothing really stands out that would make me go, whoa, that's really impressive. Due to more action-oriented gameplay, I'm afraid that character leveling progression is gonna be basic too. I would love to be wrong in the case of Avowed, would really love for Obsidian to create another experience I will remember for a lifetime, but I can't shake the feeling that Avowed is gonna end up being okay, and that's it. So my prediction is 6 on the release date, which means decent above average game with potential of 7, which means good game. Though you never know, if anyone can surprise, it is Obsidian. Then we have first Berserker Khazan, or however you pronounce that. Loving the art style and graphic style. Love the fact that the main character dual wields an axe and sword, epic stuff. Loving the blood effects. Not loving the combat though, for what I've seen so far. Combat seems pretty average, but to be fair, there was a gameplay showcase of the first 15 minutes of the game, so it's difficult to assess how deep the combat is going to be. Though we can see how the basics are, and it seems okay at best. Character moves very slowly outside of combat, but then during combat he dodges instantly, which is also weird considering that wielding two bigger weapons should not allow for such instant animations. There's an unrealistic discrepancy in speed when it comes to moving outside of combat, dodging, attacking, and seems like hit frames are not that polished, but that could be just due to the simple dodged at the right time but the animation still looks like it connected effect. Every game has that. Attacks look like they create enough impact because enemies react nicely to getting hit. Not loving the visual effects on attacks though, they are not too much but riding close to it. Sparkles just don't fit the darker world and the art style. Problem with judging the combat through trailers and showcases is that you can't feel the combat. Maybe it feels much better than it seems. Can't know that through the screen. Seems like Berserker tries to play more like Souls combat, which is great, but it's a difficult system to make really good. Also have no clue what the story is, and even if it's connected to some anime or manga, I'll make a prediction, but it might be way off. 6. Release date score with potential at 6. Don't see this game having tons of technical and fixable issues, but hard to tell. Also, what are the systems in the game? I don't have that information, but it could be incredibly important for the game's dynamics and enjoyment, which might elevate the whole thing or bring it down a notch. I would put Wuchang Fallen Feathers above first Berserker Khazan when it comes to predicting what game is going to be better based on limited footage. Wuchang looks like a highly promising game. Developers say it is inspired by Dark Souls and Sekiro, so that's gonna be interesting considering how fast the gameplay looks. More on Sekiro's side I guess, with a touch of Nioh. Gameplay presentation looks impressive with tons of cool effects, even though they could tone it down a bit in some cases like with the Fire Sword. Great bosses, deeper combat system with long range options such as minigun and flamethrower, spells and abilities. Black Myth Wukong did a wonderful thing with its many bosses, and that is gave players a freedom to use any ability on any boss with varied effectiveness. Not many games do that to that degree. I would also love that Wuchang gets some inspiration from again Black Myth Wukong in terms of story and characters, but that's a tall order. At least to some degree I would hope to see quality writing. Combat-wise, looks like we couldn't ask for more. Only thing that remains a mystery is how the game is going to be structured. I'm hoping that it's not gonna be mission-based like Nioh. Would like to see meaningful story progression. Again, would like to see more of a chapter-style progression like in Black Myth Wukong, that does it really well with great secrets and rewarding explorations. Then again, there are mission-based games like Devil May Cry that have great stories, so who the hell knows. I'm predicting a score of 8, which means a great game with potential at 8. Next is Crimson Desert. Very interesting game from all that I've seen so far. It has a familiar vibe of potentially something amazing that can be ruined by modern day systems. Modern day systems are slowing the progression through repetitiveness, inventory management, bland copy-paste world, disjointed story and so on. Especially worrying considering they are coming from an MMO, Black Desert. My biggest fear is that they are just gonna transform that MMO into a single player version with less grind, but that's not gonna work. It could make the game a mediocre single player experience. Creating a meaningful story progression in an open world is a very difficult task that not many can do. Can't remember how the writing was in Black Desert, but hopefully they can create a decent story from start to finish. Combat looks really good. Technical, good flow, good speed, and what surprised me the most were lots of grapple moves. I love grapple moves in combat, so to have it as an option is alright with me. Combat could be Crimson Desert's selling point. I don't like the combat visual effects though, as they simply don't fit the more realistic graphical presentation and art style. I don't know why they went with it, but there might be an option to turn it off. Very difficult game to predict. I don't have much faith in Pearl Abyss to create a wholesome, fantastic product, but I'm pretty sure they will nail the combat. Now whether the open world is going to be Ubisoft type or something more resembling Witcher, we shall see. Interesting thing is that the game focuses on aerial traversals, so that might open up interesting possibilities. If they create at least a decent story with a decent open world, Crimson Desert could be a 7 at the release with potential of 8 or maybe even a 9 when all the problems have been fixed and improved. However, if it's just a repurposed Black Desert, I can't see it going above 6. More realistically, it would be just a mediocre single player experience with a score of 5. Definitely a game to keep an eye on. Atomfall is an interesting project, an open-world survival game described best as the British version of Stalker. Considering the disappointment that Stalker 2 ended up being while having high potential, Atomfall might be the game to fulfill that itch while Stalker 2 gets updated and patched a million times. I've checked out the 14-minute gameplay and it seems like there's potential here. World looks a bit like Last of Us, which is a good thing. There's a good mix of scenery with integrated smaller locations into an existing landscape with lots of details. Trail going up, little pond, then the river, dam, ruins, cave, tunnel. That's a good sign. Plenty of stuff to explore and location dynamics. I like what I see. Gameplay on the other hand looks too basic. Enemy AI seems atrocious. I hope it's not gonna be like this in the final release, but it will drag down every encounter. Thankfully there's blood, but the attacks and impact of the attacks doesn't seem to be particularly convincing. Enemies are like dummies mostly from what I've seen, and either they stand and take it or move a bit and take it. I don't know what's going on with modern developers, but it just seems enemy AI hasn't received any upgrades over the years. Difficulty design is usually also very poor, just basic damage and health modifiers. Good enemy AI in a game like this would be a game changer. Imagine humans setting up ambush points after spotting you from afar, or using advanced tactics to get the upper hand. It would add so much more excitement and atmosphere. Mutants in Atomfall are quite unconvincing too. They should be some kind of atmospheric scary things, but due to bad AI and unconvincing visual presentation, it gives more of a bland vibe than anything else. Last of Us does a great job in setting up encounters against their zombies by making them more dynamic through twitchy movements, patrols and scary sounds. Atomfall has nothing like it from what I've seen, but hopefully that changes. Not know much about the story except that our character is suffering from amnesia, which can set up fantastic story and lore potentially. Though I'm very skeptical about Atomfall. I think it could end up as another disappointment as Stalker 2, calling it a 5 at release date and 6 for potential. Despite the good stuff, it looks quite unconvincing and bland. Exodus is a game from former BioWare, Naughty Dog and 343 Industries developers that looks very promising. They are describing it as an action RPG set in a sci-fi world. What interests me is how they are going to approach player choices, consequences of said choices and the writing in general, considering the emphasis on time travel or time dilation that the main character can do. So while we are experiencing stuff in the real time, the actual amount of time progressed might be decades or centuries in the game's world. It's going to be interesting how they are going to go about it, because it could be a very complex writing problem to solve. From the trailers I've seen so far, it seems like that they know what they are doing, cause it got me interested. Locations are well diverse and detailed, planets look interesting, enemies look cool, voice acting is great. There's a lot to like. Seems like it's going to be more of a story-driven game, which is great, but I would also like to have some freedom to explore the planets. Maybe sections of the game that would allow for detailed exploration. Finish story bits and pieces and then go explore. Gameplay looks similar to Mass Effect and looks good overall, though I would like to see a full combat sequence without cuts and edits. Makes me wonder about the animation quality usually when there's lots of quick cuts while revealing the combat. Important factor is if we can control the party members in any way. Would be great if we could, at least to some degree. Doesn't have to be full control. I do like that enemies fought are mostly boss-like creatures, which would lead to more unique encounters. Adding in between gangs of smaller enemies would create a good small enemies, big enemy dynamic. Potential problem with the game could be political agendas. Already Exodus has forums moderated by activists, Archetype Entertainment is a subsidiary of the Woke Wizards of the Coast, and we are talking about former BioWare employees. Maybe they left because of the agendas running through the studio. That would be a positive factor for Exodus. It's a sci-fi game, so they can go diverse as much as they want, and no one should really care if they do. But if they start preaching the agendas and portraying things to fit the agenda, then it's a different story altogether. We'll see. If the game releases in 2025, considering that 2026 is also an option, it could be one of the better games of the year. 8 as a release date score and potential of 9 if they really do well writing wise. Last game I'll talk about is GTA 6. GTA 5 is one of my favorite games of all time, talking about the single player. Fantastic story, characters, voice acting, humor, incredible open world, unique quests, freedom to do whatever we want. When Rockstar creates a game, they create a hell of a game, something that lasts a lifetime in our memory. I don't think GTA 6 is going to be an exception, even though to be honest I know very little about it. Just info from the trailer and that there are going to be two main characters inspired a bit by Bonnie and Clyde. That's cool. Could open up a whole different world playing as a female character. I hope they don't tone it down just because we are controlling a woman. I did read somewhere though that GTA 6 is gonna tone down on the jokes by being more sensitive. That's what worries me. It could be a huge problem. Most memorable things from GTA games are characters and their satirical outlook at times next to brutal story event outcomes. If we are joking, then we are joking about everything and everyone. No one is excluded. That's only fair. I just hope they don't get into agenda-driven politics too much and that the humor can still be brutal enough to make the game stand out. GTA is truly one of those games where a more sensitive approach can easily make the game more bland. Not bad or even mediocre, but just bland. In terms of gameplay, they need to polish controls a bit more and that's about it. I've only seen leaked driving gameplay, so can't comment on the overall gameplay. Really interested to see how it's gonna play. So what would be my prediction for GTA 6? This sensitive humor is something to be worried about considering GTA's history, so I'm on the skeptical side and gonna go with 8 on release date with potential staying at 8, which means a great game. If the game is a mess on release technically, then it could go down to 7 or maybe even 6 if it's a terrible release broken on many levels. Hope I'm wrong and we get another 10 out of 10 GTA. Anyway, that's it for this video. Bear in mind these are just wild guesses based on minimal information. Something to have on the channel and then get back to see how many, if any, I got right. Don't take this video seriously because it isn't a serious video. Check out the description for Patreon, subscribe and merch if you'd like, and thanks for watching.